Thank you for staying with us on Daybreak. And now we're going to talk about a really dicey situation. I mean, the military-led government of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger has planned to proceed with the establishment of a confederation. The Malian Foreign Ministry has said on Thursday, as three countries deepen ties through an alliance that threatens the broader West African integration. The military regimes in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger on January 28 announced their withdrawal from the West African bloc, the ECOWAS. At a meeting in the Burkinabe capital, Ouagadougou, with their three ministers confirmed a joint commitment to withdraw from ECOWAS without delay and continue cooperation under a pact known as the Alliance of Sahel States. With this development, of course, we'll be talking about the effect of the formation of this alliance of the Sahel states out of the ECOWAS and the African Union. Now, this we're going to address and examine the latest also developments that is happening in the Republic of Congo. I mean, the DRC Congo has had also a long, sad weekend of a lot of happenings, in the country with the fight between the military, that's the government force, and also the M23, a such situation happening there. So we'll be talking about all of this on today's discussion. We have with us to talk about this diplomat, Ambassador Haruna Ali Warkan. He is a retired diplomat with the ECOWAS Commission and was a deputy country chair on the United Nations Economic and Social Control. He's also a strategy and security administration expert and cyber practitioner. Good morning, Ambassador. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, viewers. Good morning.
So, Ambassador, let's hear your take first on all of this. I mean, there are a lot of Nigerians that don't really know this situation happening. I mean, it's known fact that, these three countries have come out to say we are exiting ECOWAS, but then people don't really know the details of this confederation that you're trying to create now. So can you give us a full sense of what that is, going to look like?
Thank you for having me again. And well, ECOWAS is passing through one of the most dire situations, one can say. Never before in the history of Africa itself would countries decide out of protest to take actions that are inimical to the very existence of such regional blocs. If we go backwards in history, it became obvious that African continent wanted to bring about a continental government that will bring all countries together and form a single government ultimately. And that was the essence of the regional blocs being easier to manage by way of integration before forming a continental body that can say, today we have a continental government. And all these borders, let us remember, were formed by European colonialists. Africa was never like this. So you have multiple borders that serve no purpose other than dividing the African peoples apart from each other. Now, the three states of the Sahel that have decided to pull out of ECOWAS, I'm pulling out of ECOWAS contrary to even the ECOWAS treaty provisions of giving 1 year notice. On this program some time ago, we did say that was an ominous step for any country or group of countries to come forward and say, we are pulling out with immediate effect. That is the catch. With immediate effect means they had decided to disregard the constitutional or treaty provisions bringing ECOWAS in the first place. Now, we need to appreciate the fact that this pulling out was as a result of a protest against the sanctions that were imposed on these sovereign governments. And remember too that they did underline or underscored the word sovereign decision. That is to say, they are not subjected to anything. It's a sovereign decision, And they took this decision in their best national interest. Now, we had observed similarly that imposing sanctions on member countries at will was not too good, because when sanctions are imposed, when countries are suspended, it means you shouldn't be talking to these countries. And that gave them room to, on their own, go backwards to look at what was happening. The threat of military intervention too, let's not forget, was quite a bad one for ECOWAS. And this is the after effect of all these measures combined. And we have also said Nigeria, as the hegemon in West Africa and a neighbor of one of the countries, did not play well, because we were unable to segregate Nigeria's national interest as against the ECOWAS regional interest. It seems
you're saying that as if there is no alignment between ECOWAS interest and Nigeria's interest. Isn't it supposed to be aligned?
No, there is an alignment, but it has to be desegregated, because national interest should still be different from the sub-regional interest. And that is where mistakes were made, surely, because, for instance, you couldn't have gone ahead to switch off Niger from electricity supply from Nigeria. We did say here that electricity supply was the product of a bilateral agreement that preceded even, ECOWAS formation. And so it was wrong, very wrong, for the government to wake up one morning and say they are switching off a whole country from the electricity supply that was carefully negotiated in such a way that Niger had to pipe down on building its own dam on the same river Niger to enable Nigeria to have two dams on the river. And now when you go ahead and take decisions that was precipitate, yes, these are some of the outcomes of what we are seeing today. Now, the confederation, as it were today, inevitable, because these countries have seen that they no longer share the ideals of ECOWAS, according to their communique pulling out of ECOWAS. And we can see the role of France in all this has been so difficult to make people understand. Countries of the Sahel are all Francophone, colonized, and they have seen that France's presence has meant nothing. You have military bases that have turned to be nothing other than like a guardsman shop for the uranium mines in Niger in particular, and Mali, the gold mines in Mali, etc. So essentially, it is not even for security. It is more economic, and economic in the interest of France.
Right. And in talking about, those interests, because we've seen the popularity of France completely diminish over the past 2-3 years, and now you were at the summit, so to say, where you get a sense that enough is enough.
Yeah.
There's no going back to this. Sure. I think the military leader in Niger, Abdurrahman Chiani, last week did re-echo that in an interview, saying that, listen, we're not even thinking about going back. So going back is not even on the table.
At all.
They did what they did to us. We survived it, and we're still surviving, and we're pushing forward. Only for us to now hear that they're going to form, a tripartite sort of alliance. And they could do that because they share a common border. Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso. Give us the upside and the downside to this. For these three countries, plus for ECOWAS, what does this breakaway alliance represent in terms of regional cohesion?
Well, for the three states, particularly their peoples, not even governments now, for their peoples, it's like a new birth, a rebirth of a long-standing agitation for true independence. This is the time that people, the citizens of these countries, are feeling that, yes, they are Africans, they belong to a country that is different, because their leaders have been able to wake up and tell the truth as it should have been all along. Previous regimes had been like largely regimes that were managed by France, imposed on the people. Today they see like a homegrown government emerging for the first time, and therefore people are identifying with this. If we recall, at the onset of the military takeovers in these countries, there was some kind of popularity that normally shouldn't have been associated with the coming into military governments into countries. But the opposite was the case. People were so happy. You could see jubilation over the streets and everywhere. Now, these states can be viable. That's the first important thing. Their sovereignties are there, and they are viable because economically, when you bring them together, irrespective of the definition finally of what the confederacy would be like, are they going to be selective confederacy or total confederacy? We wait to see how that fans out. Now, it means these countries will be able for the first time to take independent decisions for themselves without Western influences, which has been the major difficulty of these countries. You have people that cannot take decisions on their own. How can you run a government without a central bank of your own? How can you run a government without security architecture of your own? Whatever these countries were doing, they had to get permission and clearances from France. Never in the history of mankind have some people been subjected to this kind of inhumane treatment by a colonial government in a modern day era. So we see this now as a new wave of independence, and that's why it is viable. And I tell you, the combined capacity of these countries economically would surely show in the few months to come that yes, they mean business and they are going forward, and ECOWAS on the flip side would be the loser because it has jolted this organization of over 40 years.
Do you think, Ambassador, that they have thought this through? Or this is just reactionary, this is just impulsive? Coming together because they are victims, quote unquote, of a targeted attack by ECOWAS after the military takeover?
Yeah, they have thought through because you did ask this question more or less the other time, and I told you, yes, if you go back to the communique they issued, the communique they issued was very terse and very deep because it was dealing with fundamentals, not just happenstances or incidences, no. Not just a reaction to those things. There were reactions to fundamental issues of the Pan-Africanness, which is what regional integration seemed to have lost. We've copied too much of the European Union model of integration. The African Union apparently has been absent on the scene. And so a lot of things are happening that you begin to question, where is the source of this integration that we are not utilizing properly for the benefit of citizens? There has been too much integration of governments across the years since formation of ECOWAS and AU, for instance. But the integration of the people have remained largely unsuccessful. And so you have remained compartmentalized as countries rather than
even
as
with
a region.
The AFCTA, ECOWAS, the no visa restrictions, and
all these programs have come to nothing. They have come to nothing because you still cannot cross a border within ECOWAS, for instance, freely. The first protocol on free movement of persons, goods, and services, the removal of visa requirements and what have you, have translated to really nothing because the enforcement of these rights have largely remained, if possible, not that, yes, this regional bloc had a way of saying it must be done. So we are left like struggling within a setting that should have given us peace, tranquility, and confidence in ourselves as a people. And therefore, what is happening now in the formation of the Confederation is a revival of Pan-Africanism. Right. And the danger going forward is some other countries are waiting. Togo, Benin are potential candidates of this confederation.
Really?
Yes. They are potential candidates of this confederation. And therefore, let us not perhaps cap our minds as only the three.
You're making it look like, Ambassador, most member states within ECOWAS are not happy with the current arrangement.
Certainly not. There's no two ways about it. Certainly not. Because if the integration had succeeded, we shouldn't be having some of these things. Don't forget, Guinea is on the wings. Guinea, that even started this movement, so to say, is also there, a potential candidate. And one of the difficulties that you might probably say such a confederation would have imposed on these countries would have been access to the sea because of international trade and some other implications. However, by the time you get in Benin and Togo, for instance, that concern
it covers it. Even Guinea, they're right there on the Atlantic.
Very good. Right. So you see, those problems are there. Remember too that Sierra Leone narrowly escaped, having been probably sanctioned and excommunicated and what have you, and now Nigeria is equally struggling.
Speaking about Nigeria, Ambassador, let's talk about the relationship of Nigeria with all these other countries. I mean, recently we saw leaders of Fulani extractions, from Senegal, Mali, Cameroon, Niger, coming to Nigeria to talk about the insecurity bedeviling the region in general. So there has been a strong relationship between Nigeria and majority of these West African countries, and right now that is on a shaky line. I mean, considering the cut off of power supply to the Niger country. But then this group of these three countries coming together have not really, bring out their plan, but on how they are going to align their political, economic, and security matters in general. But do you think, and we all know how working together can actually aid this relationship, so do you think that there is any kind of way that Nigeria could reach out to these people, considering we've seen the military ruler saying there is no probability of them coming back to ECOWAS? But then, is there anything that Nigeria could do to reach out to these people based on their own level of interaction and relationship with the countries?
Well, Nigeria remains the hegemon in the sub-region, and therefore a lot actually depends on what happens here domestically to influence regional politicking and strategy and achievements or failures. We've said before and repeated here, Nigeria needs to do much more in the sense that besides being the chair of ECOWAS today, Nigeria needs to deploy its resources by any description and by any means to ensure the continued integrity of ECOWAS in a way. There are public posturing and there are private diplomatic moves that needs to be strengthened to ensure that some of these things could either be stemmed, reversed, or at least maintained such that the damage doesn't go beyond this. I think that's the key thing right now. The foreign ministry needs to do much more of background diplomacy today, because these are not things for the public. And you need to do this because Nigeria would eventually be the greatest loser in the event of some of these things fanning out of control, as it is already showing signs of it. And the good offices of Mr. President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria should be deployed in any means possible whatsoever to see that these countries are, brought back into the fold, because sincerely, irrespective of the downsides of integration, remaining in the regional bloc means much more to us as a country, assuming we had been able to maximize our economic potentials over this region, because the departure of France out of the region creates a vacuum. Security, economy, politics.
Just to get your reaction to this, this was over the weekend across the border in Katsina, where the Niger Customs has impounded a couple of trucks transporting grains across the border to Niger. The protest is that, you're stopping businesses, and we obviously know that the borders have been closed. So it's grounding businesses and things like that. Give me a sense of what this says about our relationship with Niger. Do you think that window to negotiate something, even at a bilateral stage, is there? Because it looks like the government is going all out to implement its border closure with Niger, for instance.
Well, remember we said the border between Nigeria and Niger is only on paper. It's only a paper frontier, because the two peoples are the same. The two peoples across the border are the same language, same tradition, same culture, and what have you. So sometimes it would be nice to be at the border to understand the dynamics of what is going on. And enforcing the border closures and all that would be practically impossible between Nigeria and Niger, because people have all along lived their lives as neighbors, very good neighbors, in fact, as one country. And if you come around now to say you want to strictly enforce some of these things, this is the effect that we are seeing now, that people are protesting against some of these things. And it might be very difficult for you to have hunger one side and prosperity on the other side, when there are even no physical boundaries, so to say. There's no river, there's no mountain, no physical whatsoever. So trucks can go in any time. Remember, the first time the previous government imposed the border closures, we saw images of how people were using motorcycles to bring in rice across the border. You can't prevent people from some of these things. And when there's need, there's an effective demand across, people will definitely find ways to do some of these things. And therefore, yes, you attempt to enforce some of these restrictions, and you see the reactions of people. People are not happy with the governments on both sides in this regard, because they want to live their lives. Politicking should be one side. Livelihoods is what is at stake here, and it will continue this way. People will surely embark on civil disobedience when this matter goes beyond reason. And I think the government needs to do much more. You can see what the reactions of the people against the customs have been. It's not going to be easy for anyone to enforce some of these
this kind of sanctions.
No. And then, generally speaking, it is seen as if it is Western manipulated. These are not homegrown issues. Talking
about the Western manipulation, Ambassador, that is where my next question is coming from. I mean, one thing we know is, united, you stand, and divided, you fall.
Yeah.
So for this that is happening currently, not only in Africa, but then West African region, where now it's looking like there are going to be two bodies, in the West Africa. How are we going to, how does this affect the African continent and the Western region, considering already we have a lot of issues starting from economic, political and other crises? How do you see this challenge affecting us?
Well, like we said, it's even much more difficult and much more sinister for us in West Africa, because the confederation of the three states is a beginning, not the end. It's a beginning and not the end. And therefore, how it will fan out in the next few months.
Is that a good thing?
Not
or
at
bad
all.
thing?
Very bad thing, but you can't help it. It has come to be. So leaders, political leaders, religious leaders, traditional leaders, and political elites particularly, needs to rethink all this through. Otherwise, yes, we will have problems. You have multiple bodies within West Africa, even before the formation of the Sahel states. Plenty of other mushroom groupings within West Africa that sometimes their interest does not dovetail into the regional blocs, regional interests. So you have issues all over the place that if our leaders don't wake up and do something positive, immediate and effective, surely there will be more of such problems. And when you have breakaways, and breakaways because of protest against the establishment, it becomes even much difficult to manage, because the Sahel states or the confederating states now did say they are leaving because they were unhappy with the internal impositions that they believe was unjustified.
Right. If we could just take a look at that map one more time, just to drive home the argument and to understand and zoom out to get a sense of it. We have Senegal, which is also teetering on, the edges there. Guinea-Bissau. You did talk about those alliances, and you could easily draw a line from Niger, Mali, Guinea, down to the Atlantic. You could also draw it straight to Senegal, should in case something happens, because the entire continent is reeling from that. This basically is remaking the region itself if this particular Sahel alliance holds sway. And we do know that that idea has been mulled over for quite some time. And you did say that this is just the beginning. Is there anything ECOWAS can do to not only stop this, but reverse it?
ECOWAS has to do everything possible. There are plenty of these possibilities. We have said the engagement of real leaders within the sub-region becomes inevitable. And you see, Senegal is already boiling, and that's why it's very difficult for ECOWAS, because now is the time for action. A sitting government has decided to find a way to extend its stay, and come the day for final day for the government, we're going to see another drama, because now the Constitutional Court has said, yes, Mr. President, you don't have a right to extend the elections. However, the elections the timetable has already come and passed. So what are you going to have? A new government coming from somewhere, or what exactly is it going to be? Now, these are the times when ECOWAS needs to take action. It is not when damage has been done, then you come in and start sanction and this. No. Senegal definitely is a very bad candidate for peace and good community relations in the sub-region. Côte d'Ivoire is quiet, but we need to also mention that so much is simmering. People are equally unhappy with what it is, because Côte d'Ivoire represents the epitome of the French alliance. And now that France is being dismantled with speed, unbelievable in some few years back, you will see that there may be some other hotspot that is also brewing, and you will therefore need something much more than what is happening. Now the question is, where is the African Union in all this? Because if your regional bloc is not working, the African Union is quiet, very quiet.
They met over the weekend in Addis Ababa. Are you saying that everything that has been said does not measure up to what you think the African Union should be saying, given what is happening in DRC, in Senegal? I mean, they have issued several statements about Senegal not accepting the postponement of the election and the extension of President Macky Sall's, tenure in office. Are you saying that, this is not concrete enough?
Not at all. Not at all. Resolutions, we've said here, resolutions are not enough. There should be official delegations coming to these countries to talk to the leadership directly, not resolutions. Resolutions can be passed and ignored. After all, such has happened before. Now, it is the time to engage these governments properly. Macky Sall, let us not forget, was once upon a time an opposition leader who harped on the failings of Abdoulaye Wade and the government and propped up a lot of stories and what have you to make the government look so bad, and that's how he got into power. Now today, we are here face to face with a brewing dictator, a brewing dynasty that is in the making. Macky Sall King, Macky Sall or whatsoever, because that's eventually what's going to happen. If he succeeds today in extending his tenure by 1 day, there is going to be an implosion in Senegal, for sure.
Do you think he's going to want to explore this alliance now? Because it could be his getaway. If ECOWAS are threatening him, do you think he could join this alliance to escape ECOWAS?
Already talks are ongoing behind the scene between all these people. And I tell you, I did say here, the confederation that is coming is just a beginning. It's not the end. More candidates are in the offing. Let me say, carrying their applications.
That is not looking good for us, Ambassador. But then, is there any fear of potential tension and conflict between this tri-state confederation about to happen with other African countries?
Well, it's an example that is very difficult to manage right now, because beside the Francophone countries, I tell you, the Lusophone countries, namely the Portuguese-speaking countries in Africa in particular, have also been so badly managed that some of them have lost their voices because Nigeria is no longer talking. Without Nigeria in the beginning, countries like Angola, like Mozambique, even Guinea-Bissau and the rest of them wouldn't have gotten independence. Therefore, that hegemon effect was what prompted some of these European countries to quietly leave Africa in quotes. And now Nigeria has become too quiet for good. The African Union meeting that just passed, what was Nigeria's take? What was Nigeria's role? Where is the giantness in us when foreign policy issues are being negotiated? We seem to have lost our voice, which is rather sad, because without us showing leadership, yes, there will be problems of this nature that might spiral out of control. Yeah. And the DRC, like you mentioned, is already a very difficult scenario also to manage, because besides being internal, it is also intra, because what is happening in Kivu and the rest of these places has the backing of a foreign government that is nearby, that is providing support for an internal insurgency.
Okay, let's dive into, the fact that you already entered DR Congo's issues. We've seen how from last week, throughout the weekend, how sad situations have been happening. Estimation of saying about 150,000 people were killed and displacement, wounded, a large number of things happening around the Kivu province, the Goma, the Sika, I think. So now you're talking about, there's been a lot of allegations blaming the Rwanda government, saying that, and let's not forget the airstrike. So is it really true? You made mention of that. Is there any valid, should I say, has it been confirmed that the Rwandan government has a hand in this, considering we've seen how other African countries have supported them, like South Africa, supporting them with the soldiers, where about 2 lives were lost from the South African army. So is there confirmed issues, and what is it that the Rwanda has against the DR Congo?
Well, you see, here again, it's a play out of ethnicity. The Tutsis are once more, after the Rwandan genocide, the same problem in the DR Congo. Tutsis are equally across the border in DRC and are saying they do not believe in the Congolese government. That's how the March 23 movement, or M23 as is popularly known, came about. They are trying to assert themselves to say, look, they have little to do with the government of the DRC. Rather, they have cultural, tribal, or ethnic affinity with their kith and kin across in Rwanda. And the Rwandan government has never shied away from declaring its position, supporting these rebel groups. This has been the problem. Now, this is happening within the confines of the understanding of the African Union, which you cannot explain. This is the failure of the African Union itself, because two countries are now sharply divided within its borders, just across, because there is an ethnic consideration of one group over the other, which means there is a territorial interest of Rwanda in DRC.
There's an allegation that it's based on mineral resources. Is there any truth to that?
There's always that prediction, isn't it? We're always fighting over something.
The mineral situation has been there for ages, and now we can see these are the effects of arbitrary colonial boundaries drawn without recourse to the social dynamics on the ground of the people. Someone somewhere, some people somewhere, some years, many years ago, sat down in Berlin and brought out the map of Africa and drew frontiers or boundaries and imposed them on Africa to say, this is my own, this is your own, we can give you this, we can give you.
And then we inherited it.
Yeah, sure. And now, here we are, as modern African governments cannot manage this. So Rwanda has never shied away from this position, that yes, it has interest in DR Congo, and the position of minerals is beyond Rwanda and DRC. It's an international conspiracy. To enable exploitation of these minerals, yes, conflicts are deliberately ignited. And for the DRC, its greatest burden is its greatest resource.
Right. Okay, just before we go, let's just circle back to the ECOWAS development. Today, February 19, it is suspected that one of the founding fathers of ECOWAS, General Yakubu Gowon, will be speaking to the press with regards to developments, I reckon, in ECOWAS. Give us a sense of what that represents, what influence he may or may not have, and whether, this sort of intervention from those who imagined the idea of ECOWAS in the first place could help save the day.
Thank you very much. One is more than happy that what is going to happen today, or about to happen now, is happening because on this program, we've made that call, a very clear call that General Yakubu Gowon should not keep quiet nor be kept aside in this very difficult moment for ECOWAS, because he happens to be the only surviving founding father of ECOWAS, the only surviving founding father of ECOWAS. And I made the call here, clear. Let ECOWAS swallow whatever pride it may have and use the good offices of General Yakubu Gowon to find ways to rally other leaders across the sub-region, irrespective of which countries are involved. This has nothing to do with just the Sahel states or Senegal or wherever. No, it has to be across West Africa. This is the time for leadership. And since we are lucky as West Africans that he is still alive and capable, he should be engaged to be able to perhaps go around, and I believe very strongly he could rally support and see maybe a slow reversal of some of these losses that has been recorded in the recent past. And I think he stands a great ground, a great opportunity to lead such a vanguard as of today. Otherwise, yes, we have this difficulty that is brewing. All the other countries that are boiling quietly yet for now, the lead is not off. But the moment these leads are off, believe you me, it will become uncontrollable. So I think we should give kudos to General Gawan in this regard for having come forward to this.
That one. Ambassador, a quick one. What will your call be to African Union in terms of all of this that's happening, not only in the West Africa, but the other African countries in general? You made mention of how it's not only, it's like a propaganda, you know, to steal from Africans, but with the help of Africans. Let's not forget that. I mean, someone cannot just enter your home without someone opening the door for them. So what would
unless they're bandits, of course, they can open the door by themselves. Right.
Well, yes, the African Union, like we said, should do beyond resolutions. I think that is the major problem. Beyond resolutions, there should be action.
What would the action be? Sanctions?
No. Sanctions are counterproductive. We've said so. Sanctions are counterproductive. Sanctions are usually against the people. Sanctions as a diplomatic or political tool for change of attitude has never really worked, because after some time, sanctions seems to lose their essence, and sanction busting becomes a big business. And in the end of it all, you see that, yes, we have learned to live with sanctions, and therefore, what is it in it again? So now, African Union needs much more diplomatic moves. Leaders of thought are plenty of all over Africa. They should be assembled to visit some of these countries, talk to leaders directly. It is not in the confines of African Union summit meetings, in the sidelines of these meetings. No, go straight to the countries, talk to the leaders, not just the ruling elite, but other levels of leadership in some of these countries is what we need now, because sincerely, Africa is like going into pieces before our very eyes. And it's quite sad, because we should be doing better than this. Now, the issue of the resource and resource control should be paramount wherever they go, because security-wise, analysis has shown that wherever you see natural resources, the preponderance possibility of conflicts are always tied there. So there is a link. The nexus between resources and conflict has remained very, very eloquent, which we need to address.
Right.
It's really sad. At the end of the day, civilians are paying, you know, dearly for it.
We're counting our losses in lives, in the destruction of a continent that has all the potential to be one of the best continents in the world.
Indeed.
Ambassador, as always, thank you most kindly for your invaluable analysis, as well as your expert insight into some of these issues. Really appreciate you for stopping by this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Thank you.